Everyone to the one of the first installments of the Performance Lab podcast. I'm your host, Richard Bowie, alluding to kind of start this podcast, but I think it's a new year, January 1st, 2026, and let's get things started. I hope to be able to unwrap some major talking points that occurs within junior tennis, more importantly, like on the USTA level, of course, the ITF level, taking in discussions from early competitions and L7s all the way up to level ones. I think we're going to have a really good panel and guest of people that will come on and some great talking points. Today's topic here, we're going to talk about today's topic. Did I forget what today's topic or title was on day one? I got to polish this up. Today's topic: lessons are easy, coaching is hard. Why competitive players are stuck and what real coaching requires. We're going to talk about that. It's a bold statement I'm making. I'm sure I'm going to have some coaches coming from my neck and say, who are you? What are the opinions? Why are you talking about lessons? And blah, blah, blah. Of course. I'm not making an attack on coaches. Listen, lessons itself are a surefire way of a coach getting great value for their time on court, being able to recycle a lot of the same teachings or sessions hourly, back to back. And usually lessons go for an hour, 2 hours, depending on where you are and the coach. But we just see that there is a repetition in the way in which the service is being offered. Most junior players are taking lessons. Very few are being coached. The paradox: more court time than ever, yet performance progression is flat. We see this. I mean, not necessarily at the top level, but we know that there is a large group of players and people that don't really have the progress stuff they're looking for and able to reach more of their potential. The guiding question to the audience I got to ask is, are you developing or just playing for reps? I mean, this is really the question we got to ask ourselves when you're looking at your kids. I mean, there's a fine line between a player that is developing, sharpening your sword, your tools, your skills, and we have this endless appetite for skill acquisition, sometimes so at the expense of actually learning and understanding the game. Strokes do solve a lot of problems, solves many problems. But what happens when you meet someone, you've got your sword, they have their shield, and they also have a sword. The player with the best tactical awareness, the player with the better match or court instincts is going to prevail. I mean, there are lots of factors that go into being a good competitive junior. You know, there's a mental, there's a tactical, there's a technical, there's a physical component. And it's hard to say you're going to succeed without all these components. Furthermore, that kind of really supports the notion that lessons just aren't enough. Very often lessons, you're coming in and the coach is going to work on your serve. You played a match and you double faulted 8 times, and it's certainly a bias or a sensation that the parent or the player needs to we need to fill that hole. Of course, it's going to be difficult to have a great tournament or to do well if you are donating points. But there are other factors associated with that. Now, we look at the causation of why the double faults. I mean, that could be a mental component more so than a tactical component, right? Or technical, I'm sorry. And this is where coaching itself becomes the secret sauce. Not really much of a secret, but where it's lacking. There's a disconnect in the feedback loop between what the player does and what the player is being taught. Now, any experienced coach, we see certain things that are on the practice court that fall apart in competition. And it's really important to connect those two as to why this mechanic or technical thing is breaking down, if we haven't identified that already in the more lesson or practice setting. So this is where the nuance of coaching comes into play. What is a lesson? It's transactional, 1 hour of hitting, fixing technique. Successful if you hit a lot of balls or feel good afterwards. That's a good lesson. Teacher-controlled session, player simply participates. That's a bit hard. That was one of the feedbacks we got as far as definitions of a lesson. If that's the case, then I think that's a little bit of a void. Don't get me wrong. If your kid is starting out as a beginner, or intermediate, doesn't have really a lot of experience or understanding in their early development stage, I think that the coach should have a lot more of a command style approach. with lessons, there's no accountability beyond the hour. I think that's a great talking point. I mean, you come in, let's say the rate's $100 an hour. You come in, you're there 59 minutes, and next pipeline, the next player comes in, and there isn't much of a connection between that time and I'll see you next Tuesday. We have to ask ourselves, what is coaching? The high performance necessity. Transformational, connecting to the hour, to the long-term plan. Keyword plan. Adaptation, execution, and improvement metrics. We got to measure, we got to assess. It's not just a result, whatever performance things or KPIs we can find. Collaboration. Player learn to think, problem solve. And that's great coaching. Getting a player, and this is a big thing I see that's happening a lot with coaches. They're telling the players everything to do, not allowing for the player to develop into a conversation or an understanding. Now, I don't mean you need to question the coach, but the communication should become a certain point cooperative, open to asking questions. And that's a form of coaching style. Rather than just giving the kid the information, have the discourse with them. Start with an open-ended question with, why'd you miss that shot? If the response after several times of the player is always, I don't know, then we can understand the kid is not learning. Now, a wrong response is a whole lot better than a no response. We want the player to become situationally, tactically, even somewhat technically aware, because that's where the true essence of becoming a player is. That player has to figure out the answers for the questions that occur in a match or just occur within a rally. There's a clear distinction between the two. Lessons build strokes. It's a big component of it, right? And very often we see the repetitive redundancy. Let's come in, we do forehand cross, forehand down the line. Very often they end with a serve. Nothing necessarily wrong with this. But as a player begins to scale and their tools and their skills improve or their competition level improves, this has to become a lot more comprehensive. And where things need to shift from just the lesson to the plan. The connection between that time on the court needs to be very user-specific, player-specific to the long-term plan. And the approach sometimes just needs to be a little tailored to that individual. We heard Paul Annacone use an example. He said, you have the mechanic and you have the magician. Some players respond and need a lot of repetition to figure out and understand or problem solve things that are there technically to get the outcome of the shot they want. And there's some players or people have to label as talented that just somehow with a little bit of feedback, they figure it out. Less repetition, right? And understanding nuances of that player. And this is where the difference between coaching and a lesson is. A coach needs to understand and tailor the sessions, the long-term vision, short-term vision for the player. And it is a responsibility of the parents to sit there and say, hey, I need to kind of work with a coach and maybe sometimes a singular voice for a good enough period for us to try to get the messaging across. The hidden problem in junior tennis. Parents believe more lessons equal more progress. I mean, yes. And I mean, no. I've seen some really competent coaches get really comfortable in using the same cookie cutter method for all their players, for all the sessions, spending time on things that are maybe important and relevant to them and their philosophy and their methodology, but not necessarily important or significant or the main priority for this player. We know coaches that repeat the same lesson hour after hour because it's easy. Now, I'm not making an attack on coaches. I'm just trying to identify a problem that I think us as an industry needs to be aware of. Like there is a disconnect. Now, those kids that are top 10, top 15 in their section, top 100, it's really hard to assume they don't have some form of coaching. I think we can all agree that Tennis is one of those sports that is very hard to be at a good level without some true guidance or understanding. It's not the sport you go into the park and you figure it out and you become a good level player. I mean, it just doesn't happen in the modern game. And if it does, it's an anomaly. But we're not here to talk about anomalies. We're here to talk about most people. I think we hear a lot of conversations about international players are taking the scholarships, or these college coaches say we don't have enough good players. I think because our baseline of players or our baseline of development and our baseline of coaching isn't there. Not because we don't have competent coaches. I think we have to hold these coaches a little accountable to say, hey, I need a little bit more than a lesson. Obviously, valuing their time, valuing their expertise, or maybe just finding someone who's able to be there more than just give the lesson, or finding a balance of two. It can be a great coach who's great at working on the serve, and you work with that player, that coach, particularly for that lesson, but there needs to be some form of coaching. Someone that's there to give the feedback within the player's performances, their habits. It could be a parent, could be a sibling, could be an uncle, but it's important to have that understanding of coaching. What real coaching looks like. And this is where it gets a little spicy, because I think this is where we're going to start to challenge people or maybe offend a few people what real coaching looks like. I've heard this term when someone say, the parent repeats a real coach. And I think they said that arbitrary. I think there are a lot of real coaches or people that have the capacity to be real coaches. But the profession itself is easy just to give lessons. So what does real coaching look like? Long-term athlete development aligned to goals and competitive standards. Sounds complex, but important. Coverage across the full performance map. Technical mechanics, efficiency under stress. Tactical patterns, identity, problem solving. Physical, speed, stamina, durability. I think a coach has to have some oversight or understanding of that to create a plan. Understanding the mental components, the pressure, the routines, the confidence, the emotional control, and having that relationship with the player to talk to them outside of the lessons. Between session engagement, sometimes having a coach see a match, see a practice set at their facility, in perfect world, see their tournament. I mean, I love myself hosting tournaments sometimes with some of my players because it gives a great, easy opportunity just to kind of capture, watch, or see them in that scenario. And you couldn't tell that I work with the player or know the player because I wear a different hat. But within my same space, I'm able to see many of the players compete and learn. You know, the players at the higher level get the luxury of being at these facilities like in Lake Nona, where their matches are all live streamed. So even though I'm not present, I'm able to see all the nuances, how the player performs, looking to identify some type of match analysis, whether that's technical, tactical, emotional, and getting and connecting that between our training sessions. And just getting that bit of feedback helps a lot in the progress of my player. And as a coach, it helps me to deliver a better service to that player because I know where the areas of focus lies. And again, this is something that's afforded to the players at the top because they're playing at these more signature locations, bigger events, and get the luxury of these matches being filmed or live streamed, which isn't necessarily available to all lower level players, especially the L6. Guiding parents to their tournament selection. You want to do some form of tracking, performance tracking to see how well they're doing with certain KPIs, their first serve percentages, or maybe looking at like, are they doing a better job of getting more returns in play? Or they're reducing their unforced errors, just getting a sense of that to figure out how to better tailor their sessions. Let's talk about the cost. Ching, ching. Well, I don't have that sound effect, but let's talk about the cost. People assume that having a coaching and lessons are two different animals. Yes and no. I mean, lessons itself can be really expensive, but also not as effective without a connection within the feedback or not having these large gaps in between the sessions, the players' group practices or their matches, and not being able to reinforce or see the I would say execution and development of a certain skill set, even in a practice play. Lessons feel cheaper. 1 hour, one payment, done. It's a sweet spot for a parent. Are we going to pay what you're going to get? It's over. Coaching feels expensive. Planning, analysis, calls, travels, data. Yeah, it's a lot. But in trying to figure out how to make the best player or get your kid to be at their potential, you have to find a way to get these things for them to be able to succeed. We're investing a lot in traveling and tournaments, and spending the money feels a whole lot better when your kid's winning. Lessons equal expense, coaching equals investment. I think that's powerful. Lessons are an expense and important. Again, not saying you don't need lessons, make that very clear. But when connecting lessons with coaching or coaching itself, comprehensive coaching that includes lessons, that is an investment where you expect a better return, an ROI on your player's progress, not the short-term impact that 59 minutes with the coach will have on your player's forehand, which in a perfect world, it's fixed, it's great, the forehand solves most of the problems it needs to, and it's just a technical solution for whatever the kid's dealing with. Now, of course, we can say Coco doesn't necessarily need, she hired on her team a technical coach. I think his name is Matt Namara, and he does a lot of work with her serve. But I'm sure he's connecting as a coach the difference between her biomechanics and her mechanics and how these things are performing under pressure, measuring or assessing when these double faults occur, looking at her body, looking at her time in between serving between first and second serve, its number of bounces. You're looking at maybe the player's taking a deeper breath. It could be psychological. There's tension, and how does this tension affect the mechanics? But he's incredible biomechanics. So this is why coaching itself, even though he's probably a phenomenal person to give a serve lesson to any individual here, what he's giving to Coco is at a different level where on her team, he's now becoming more of the coach, which is connecting the lesson component or the technical component to everything or piece that she needs within her performance. The opportunity cost of not coaching. You talk about stagnation, where a player just can't move, can't win, can't figure it out because they don't know what to do. Something's missing. It's not working. I can't go any faster. And yeah, we all know players will have a certain ceiling, but I see players that are way short of their ceiling, way short, because they're lacking the coaching, or the coaching didn't occur soon enough within their development, and then they get discouraged, and then there's burnout, and then there's lack of confidence and lack of passion for the game. And without that, it's hard for them to do well. You lose scholarship opportunities, maybe paying more later to fix these fundamental gaps or these learning gaps or these developmental gaps. I mean, like the player's been playing a lot and learned how to hit an offensive forehand, but doesn't know how to hit a forehand on the run or a defensive forehand. And then you're trying to rewire that player's technique because everyone's so enamored that, oh, they hit these phenomenal forehand winners. Great job. But not recognizing that the quality of play and the speed of play will pick up, and the player lacks the adaptability with their forehand to deal with the ball coming back as quickly as they sent it, and sometimes faster. All right. Coaching requires hard things. A hard conversation is about standards, addressing weaknesses honestly, holding the athlete accountable to goals. I think goal setting is such a major thing that's missing in junior tennis. Players just kind of playing aimlessly, going week to week, being impulsive. Coach is not always liked, but always respected. I don't know how I feel about that one. Even though, yeah, I want my players to respect me, but I think it's really hard for them to have a great, successful relationship if the player doesn't, at some degree, like you. Quote, a good coach tells the truth even when it hurts. Powerful. I think with any of the players I have work with myself, I like to feel that I can give them a compliment, which is tough. I'm tough with that one. And also give them the truth, even when it hurts, knowing that I'm not just doing that to tear them down. I'm giving the harsh truth. And the next thing is, let's go fix it. Let's go work on it. Let's get better at it. And that's true coaching. The next topic we talk about is practical guidance for families. Question parents and players should ask. Ching, ching. I'm sure this is the part where this is the Q&A moment. What is your long-term plan and timeline? I think that's really important to set that up, and I think that's very missing from a lot of parents. I think if you took our coaching questionnaire, high performance coaching questionnaire, a lot of parents would be like, oh, we don't have one. You don't have one. What are you doing for the next 3 months? I don't know, working on serves, consistency. I mean, not necessarily wrong, not necessarily bad, but also sounds quite limited in what level or stage of player is your child at. What does success look like this month, this year? Great question. Is that, I know most parents are like, oh, results, win, UTR, let's go, boom. All right. The easy way, the most measurable things. But success could mean the players develop a better understanding on the court. The player solving problems more. The players' serve percentage being higher. Understanding that that was a key metric that they were struggling with. How can you win if you can't get the first serve in? I mean, unless your opponent's not that good, but there's usually a direct correlation between high first serve percentage and a good result. Other questions we're going to look at are, who is tracking performance data? Wow, this is one. Very often this is up to the parents. I mean, unfortunately, that I think there are some tools and things out there that parents need to have to kind of maybe using these data apps. I mean, if you're playing match play at your club, your facility, your academy, I think it's great for the coach to kind of watch, if not film it. I'm a big believer in Swing Vision. It kind of just set it up, start the match, get the data, chop it up. I can watch a set within 12 minutes, cutting the dead times and cross-reference that with data and some suspicions and say, cool, I have a better understanding. You did this well and you're improving in this specific area. Or an area, say we need to polish up that point and look for certain tendencies that occur, like realizing that, okay, this seems to be a chronic issue because it appears to several matches or sets you've played. So sometimes that falls into the parents. In a perfect world, the coaches, if you can, the coaches, they're watching the matches, interpreting it with their eyes, interpreting it with recording, interpret it with video. Like I said, at the top level, all these matches are live stream. I'm able to watch these players play under good stress at L1s and see the information, jot down notes, and have a great action plan. What are the standards for behavior, training load, competition selection? I don't know if there's standards, but I think that this is very often a piece that's very much missed in between lesson and the coaching, is that there needs to be some guidance toward the parents. And I think you need to vet out whether it's the direct coach you're working with or have someone as a performance manager who can give you a little bit of a blueprint. Sometimes parents also look at other more experienced parents to get a roadmap of what to do with their kids. I mean, that person or other parent could be a great coach to you becoming, playing that role, which I think a lot of parents are forced to wear that hat in that regards because just can't afford, or the coach doesn't have enough time or to oversee everything. But I think the conversation needs to happen between, in that case, between the lesson, or the coach is giving the lesson, and whoever is managing that ship, which is very often the parent. What does the coach do when we're not on the court? I don't know, teach another lesson. Yeah, I mean, the coach, I mean, it depends on what you have, right? A lot of coaches won't take a phone call because that's their time and they want to charge you for it, understandably so. If I was a lawyer, you get billable hours. I get it. But I think making a creative plan with a coach that you can have some accessibility with them away from the court, just to give feedback on what's happening and stuff like that, or having these little briefings or conversation before or after a lesson to kind of reinforce what needs to be reinforced and keep the feedback loop open. And when you can, hopefully the coach or someone experienced or vigilant enough eyes can give back information to the coach and keep that feedback loop. Your strengths, weaknesses, identity. How to know you're being coached. I'm sorry, let's repeat that. How to know you're being coached. Your strengths, weaknesses, and identity. Every drill had a purpose tied to competition demands. There is a follow up and accountability. You improve under pressure and not just in practice. And that's, I like. I'm going to close with this. We've been going on almost 30 minutes here. I'm going to make a message to the players. Stop being passengers in your own development. To the parents, spend your money on the work that actually moves the needle. Anyone can give a lesson. Coaching is what builds champions. Now, thank you for guys checking me out, checking out the Performance Lab podcast. I hope this was insightful. Check out our stuff on the Score app if you have some questions about what you think your high performance level is. We have a little questionnaire you can fill out that it's on the website, or we'll drop a link. And see you soon.